Okay, let's go back in time a little bit, to the early 2000s. The internet was, still kind of the Wild West, especially if you were deep in the underground music scene. And back then, the darker, the more mysterious a band's backstory was, the more legit they seemed. It was the perfect breeding ground for a legend. And this one band, Velvet Cacoon, they came along with a story that was so extreme, so perfect, it got everybody talking. The only problem? None of it was true.
I mean, really think about that for a second. The music you absolutely love, the stories that just pull you in, the tragic figures you look up to. What if you found out the whole thing, top to bottom, was just a huge, elaborate lie, a perfectly crafted hoax? Well, that's exactly what happened to fans of one of the most buzzed-about black metal bands of the era.
All right, so let's get into it. Velvet Cacoon. For a period there, from about 2002 to 2009, this band was the ultimate mystery. They just sort of appeared out of thin air with music that was genuinely incredible and a backstory that was completely nuts. They were everything that scene wanted. They were dark, they were reclusive, and they were ridiculously extreme. But behind that curtain was a secret that would eventually make their entire fan base turn on them.
So to really get why everyone felt so betrayed, you have to understand the myth they built. And wow, was it a myth? This wasn't just some band. It was a living, breathing legend that got more and more wild with every single forum post and every rumor that spread. So what exactly went into cooking up this perfect storm of a lie?
The claims just kept piling on top of each other. First, you have this kind of romantic idea of them recording an album on a ship out in the middle of the Pacific. Okay, cool. Then it gets weirder. They used a custom diesel harp guitar, which they recorded underwater. Then it gets dangerous. They have ties to eco-terrorists, and they're chugging cough syrup to get inspired. And finally, it just goes full-blown mythic. Members are supposedly setting themselves on fire on stage, and their drummer tragically died after falling off a cliff. It was just pure, unfiltered metal folklore.
And every good story needs its characters, right? So you had the front man, Josh, who went by SGL. You had this mysterious female multi-instrumentalist named Angela. And of course, you had the tragic fallen hero, SKV, the drummer who supposedly met this incredibly grim, drunken end. These weren't just musicians. They were archetypes, perfectly designed to get fans speculating and obsessing over them.
But the real centerpiece of the whole legend, the one thing everyone was talking about, was the diesel harp. I mean, come on, just listen to the name. A diesel-powered guitar recorded underwater in aquariums. It sounds completely absurd, but that's what made it so brilliant. It was so specific, so technical sounding, and so out there that you almost felt like it had to be real. It was the perfect hook for a scene that was always searching for the next crazy innovation in sound.
And here's the kicker. Here's why it all worked so well. The music was actually good, like really good. Their 2004 album, Genevieve, is this genuinely haunting, amazing piece of atmospheric black metal. Critics loved it, fans loved it, and when the music is that compelling, you're a lot more willing to believe the wild stories that come with it. The quality of the art made the lie feel real.
But of course, no myth can last forever, especially not one that was built on the internet. After years of all the speculation and these growing legends, the fan base, the really dedicated ones, they started to dig a little deeper. And as they did, that carefully built story around Velvet Cacoon started to show some pretty serious cracks.
And just like that, the whole thing started to fall apart. But the first domino to fall wasn't someone proving the diesel harp was fake or finding the supposedly dead drummer alive and well. Nope, it was something much more concrete and in the music world, way more scandalous. Plagiarism. Fans started noticing the parts of Velvet Cacoon's music sounded familiar, a little too familiar. People online started putting the tracks side by side, showing that entire musical passages, even lyrics, were just straight up lifted from other, much smaller artists. And once you see something like that, the smoking gun, you start to question everything. If they're going to lie about the music itself, what else are they lying about? The whole foundation of their myth just started to crumble.
And then came the confession. Josh Lobb, the guy behind SGL, he finally came clean. The diesel harp, the most famous part of their entire legend, was nothing but a marketing tool. He basically said it was an experiment, a social commentary to prove just how easy it is to fool a scene that prides itself on being super serious and authentic.
So, with the floodgates open, the whole truth just came pouring out. And honestly, it was even more shocking than the original myths. The entire identity of Velvet Cacoon was about to be taken apart piece by piece, revealing the pretty boring reality behind this huge, elaborate fantasy.
So the whole thing was just torn down. The members, fake. Angela, the mysterious female musician, She never existed. The photos of her were just random pictures stolen from the internet. SKV, the dead drummer, also completely made up. The stories, the ship, the eco-terrorism, setting themselves on fire, all lies. And the music? Well, we already saw. Some of it was just stolen. Which brings us to the final, most important reveal.
There was no band, there wasn't some tragic group of reclusive artists. It was just one guy, Josh Lobb. He was SGL, he was Angela, he was the ghost of SKV. He wrote the stories, he faked the interviews, he created all the music. Velvet Cacoon wasn't a band, it was a solo art project built on a massive deception.
And here's the beautiful, ironic twist in all of this. Out of all those wild, unbelievable claims, the one thing that was probably true was the most boring one, the rumor about using cough syrup, dextromethorphan, to get creative. In a story built on these fantastic lies, the only truth was the part about getting high on cheap medicine.
So, as you can imagine, the reaction from the black metal community was swift and it was brutal. This is a scene that, for all its theatrics, puts authenticity and sincerity above everything else. They didn't see this as some clever art project. They saw it as someone mocking them. Velvet Cacoon went from being this celebrated cult favorite to a total pariah, a joke that the scene felt was on them.
So what happens after the biggest hoax in your scene gets totally exposed? Well, the band, or I guess the project, just vanished. Josh Lobb broke up Velvet Cacoon and basically disappeared. For years, the story was just this cautionary tale, a legend of a completely different kind, but the story doesn't quite end there.
And when you look at the timeline, the whole journey is just wild. You've got the rise from 2002 to 2004, the peak of the myth-making, then the big crash around 2009, when the truth finally comes out. That's followed by a long 15-year silence where the name Velvet Cacoon was basically synonymous with hoax. And then, in one last, totally unpredictable twist, a new album just appears in 2025. This myth, it seems, just refuses to die.
So what does all this mean? Well, the story of Velvet Cacoon is like a perfect time capsule of early internet culture and how these niche communities work. It shows us that in a world where we're all hungry for good stories, a well-told lie can sometimes be way more powerful than a boring truth. It's a reminder to always be a little skeptical, but also, maybe, to appreciate the absolute bizarre creativity of a truly epic hoax. And that really leaves us with one final question. What was the real art of Velvet Cacoon? Was it the music, or was it the myth? I mean, all these years later, people are still talking about the diesel harp, not necessarily a specific guitar riff. So you kind of have to wonder, did the lie, in the end, create a more interesting, more lasting piece of art than the music ever could have by itself? Definitely something to think about.